Hi everyone, welcome back to the Business Continuity Digitalization BCD webinar. It's me, Michelle. It's been a while since our last webinar and we have some great things in store for you. Before we start, Alt HR has a podcast now. So all you need to do is search Alt HR podcast on Spotify and you'll be able to find our webinars trimmed down into more digestible lengths so that you can listen to them on the go, whether you're driving, eating, working, cooking, cleaning. I know, that is incredible. Thank you. If you're here early, do say hello or good afternoon in the comments box if you're here already. Once you're nice and comfortable, please check into this webinar using our link in the description box below or inside the chat. Before we begin, here is a short video about our new HR super app, Alt HR. Enjoy.
Does your company have these problems? Meet Alt HR, the super app for companies. Alt HR is not your typical HR solution. To start, we designed and tested this with more than 1,500 Digi employees. But it doesn't matter what your company size is. You can still use Alt HR. If you have existing HR policies, you can easily plug them into Alt HR. If not, let us help your company adopt the latest HR practices that we've tested with Digi's HR team. Say goodbye to stacks of papers and complex spreadsheets. Say goodbye to manual works and hours spent on administrative tasks. With Alt HR, you can easily carry out HR processes with our clean and simple user interface. Easy for your employees, painless for your HR. Perform HR operations such as leave management, expense claims to new hire onboarding. Keep your employees happy and manage their well-being with case management, checklists, and highlights. If that's not enough, we have more. Be it to adapt to the new normal or to enable your teams to be more agile, you can check out our attendance and time tracking module. With Alt HR, clock in and clock out by just using a smartphone to have an even simpler digital management of all attendance data. Punch cards no longer needed. In services, your employees can purchase vouchers, pay their utility bills, mobile reloads, and other essential services from inside Alt HR itself. Have you heard of an HR app that does this? Your employees deserve the best. Let us help you with that.
Welcome back to the show. Good afternoon again. My name is Michelle and I'll be your host for today's webinar. It's been a long time since we've done a webinar. How is everyone doing? If your office is in Selangor and you have a public holiday tomorrow, go ahead and give us a thumbs up or a muscle emoji in the comments box to tell us how happy you are. I certainly am. Now, before we start, do fill up the form provided in the link in the description box below so that we can send you some materials as well as a special promo from StashAway after this. A quick introduction to DGX before we begin. DGX is Digi's venture builder arm, and our focus is to help Malaysian companies of all sizes solve business problems by digitalizing their operations through our digital solutions such as Alt HR, as you've just seen, Omni Hotline, as well as iFleet. Today's webinar is run together with StashAway, a digital wealth management platform that invests your money in low-cost, risk-managed portfolios of ETFs. If you're currently using StashAway, maybe you can also give us a thumbs up in the comments box section. If you don't know them yet, StashAway, you can learn more about them later after this. Today, we have a very special guest, Michele, the co-founder and CEO of StashAway. He spent half of his career in and around financial services as a consultant to large financial institutions at McKinsey, and then as a private equity investor. He then spent the second part of his career building consumer internet companies, and most recently as the group CEO of Zalora, where he was responsible for growing it 15x and becoming the undisputed leader in the market. Welcome to the BizCD webinar series. Michele, we are so happy to have you join us.
Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction, and thanks everyone to be here tonight. Today.
I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you. So I will assume that you can all see my screen. Michelle and Isa, please let me know if that's not the case. Thanks everyone for joining. As Michelle mentioned, today I'll speak about how to build a solid business in uncertain times, and I'll give a few points of views on things that I think needs to be done as you manage a company of whatever size in periods like the one we've lived through this year, and probably we're going to live for a little bit of time. Now, before I start, Michelle gave a very nice introduction of myself, so I'm not going to repeat her. But in short, I'm the co-founder and CEO of StashAway, and StashAway is a digital wealth management platform that helps people like me, like Michelle, like all of you, manage their money with a very easy to use, cost-effective platform that gives access to very intelligent investments. So if you're curious about knowing more about StashAway, you can simply go to stashaway.com, or you can download the app from the Android or iOS store. At the end of the presentation, I'll also give a discount code for you guys to try if you are not a client and if you want to see what it is. Okay. So 2020 has been a very tough year for everyone. But the reality is that some businesses did well. I think, if you follow the stock market, you probably have appreciated the fact that, some extremes will be Zoom or the e-commerce company doing very well. But not only them, there is quite a few businesses that actually have done well in terms of financial performance over the course of the year. So the topic that I'm going to try to address today is trying to kind of give a few points of views, a few ideas, a few insights on what any business can do to make sure that next year is as good as it has been for a great company this year. And obviously, as people in the audience come from different sectors, different size of companies, I'll try to be very broad in my points of views, and some of the suggestions may be relevant for some people, some other suggestions may be relevant for others. And I'm very happy at the end of the presentation to spend time and do Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions in the box, and at the end, Michelle and I will address as many questions as we can. Okay. So I'm going to speak about 4 things, and the core message is that the basic rules of good management become more important when things get rough. And I'm kind of talking about 4 basic rules. One is start from protecting the company's future, and I'll give a little bit of deeper insight in a second. 2 is keep innovating. 3 is take care of your gold mine. And 4 is think ahead. So let's start from the first one. What do I mean by protect the company's future? You need to start by looking at your balance sheet. And in particular, you need to look at your future balance sheet. What is the balance sheet? It's the assets and liabilities you have. It's the cash you have in the bank, most importantly. And you need to make sure that 12 months from now or 18 months from now, you still have choices. What does that mean? It means that 12 or 18 months from now, you'll still have enough cash in the bank account that enables you to do things, to change path, to do something new, to potentially restructure the company. And therefore, that's why you need to start from here, because you need to buy yourself time, especially when times are uncertain. How do you do that? I mean, there is obviously a few things you can do. You can raise cash, which means you can try to find a new shareholder that does a capital increase, giving you equity putting cash in the company in exchange for shares, in exchange for equity. Or, depending on what is the company situation, you might be able to raise debt from a bank. And obviously, when things go badly, like it has been for the last year or so, the earlier you approach a bank to get debt, probably the easier it's going to be to get it. So quick reaction is very important. You probably have read sometimes in March, April, that a lot of publicly listed company that had some debt facilities open, they actually draw down on those facilities. They made sure that the banks didn't close the facilities before they actually were able to pull cash in the bank. Cash in the bank sometimes is expensive because either debt or equity is going to be expensive, but it buys you time. It gives you the opportunity to make choices down the road. If you can't raise cash because no investor wants to invest in a company or because the banks don't want to give debt, one thing you can do is you can sell assets. Let's say you own the building where your office is or where your inventory is. And obviously, you've owned it for a long time, you've saved on rent, but it might not be the best. It doesn't maybe doesn't feel the best financial decision. But if the choice is having cash or not having cash in the bank, there's really no choice. You need to find ways to get cash. So you may want to consider selling some assets, and that for larger company that might include selling a country, or selling a business unit or whatever that might be. And obviously, the last thing is cut cost. Some of you might be thinking, "Oh, you're talking about a balance sheet. Why are you talking about costs? Costs go in the P&L," which is fair. I'm talking about your future balance sheet. So if you cut costs today, you will improve your balance sheet a year from now, right? Because you're obviously going to end up with a bit more cash, and those are all things you need to consider. To give you a kind of a real life example, if you followed StashAway, StashAway is now a 4.5 years old company. We've been very successful so far in both Singapore and Malaysia. We actually recently launched in Dubai, and when COVID hit in February, March, we asked ourselves, okay, how do we make sure, we don't know what the future looks like, and so how do we make sure that a year from now, 2 years from now, we'll be able to continue doing what we have in our plans? And our plans were very ambitious. We wanted to launch in 3 new countries, for instance. And so what we did is we were not supposed to raise equity at the time. My plan was to raise equity around now or early next year. What we did is we went immediately to actually talk to investors, and we raised $16 million fundraising equity round in the month of July. And so with that, we were now able to definitely, we know now that there is not going to be any issue, and therefore that we have as long time as we want to do everything we want to do. And that's why we felt we could launch Dubai, which we did, and now we're working on launching 2 more countries in the next few months. So we went from kind of option number 1 because it was possible for us. The capital markets liked what we were doing, and it was easy to actually raise equity at prices that made sense for us. So first, protect the company's future. Point number 2 is keep innovating. Sometimes when things get difficult, our reaction tends to be just defend. But if you only defend it, you're simply kicking the can down the road, meaning that maybe you can lower cost, you can strengthen your balance sheet, but if you don't do anything else, a year from now, you're going to have bigger issues than you have today. So in parallel to protecting your balance sheet, your future balance sheet, you need to start thinking about, okay, what else can I do to make sure that a year from now or a year and a half from now, I'm in a better position. And there is a famous quote from Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon, saying, companies have short time spans, and Amazon will be disrupted one day. My job is to make sure this happens after I'm dead. So his relentless focus on innovating, on doing new things, on launching new business units, on making sure that the company disrupts itself in many, many ways. It's obviously a good example of how you think ahead, how you keep innovating. And that can be, very basically, the first thing you may want to look for is new distribution channels. So if you are a traditional company, you may want to look at how you can use the internet or online channels, e-commerce, or whatever the appropriate channel for your business model might be to actually reach new clients. And sometimes traditional companies are worried about opening new channels because they believe that they're going to cannibalize the main channel they currently work on. And my point of view is that at the end of the game, you don't really have a choice. clients will have that choice. And so if you decide not to launch a new channel because you're worried about cannibalizing yourself, well, somebody else will, and that somebody else will eat you. So you're in a better shape if you cannibalize yourself than if you get somebody else to eat you. So I think considering new channel is always something that I think you need to take a little bit of courage and go ahead. And secondly, of course, is thinking about new products and what else can you. What are the problems that your clients have you can actually help them solve? And once you have a large customer base, of course, it becomes an interesting part to look into. And this sounds great and easy on paper, but obviously it's very difficult to decide which channel to launch, which new product to launch, and which ones not to launch. And the decision of both launching and not launching are very difficult. So, I've been trying to think about kind of giving you some insight on how we think about this at StashAway and where to start. And I think that there is one key kind of a organizational setup that enables any organization to continue launching, new channels, new product. And, to go on with the Amazon example, you might have read in the last few months that Amazon in the US is now becoming a pharmacy as well. So it's kind of launching sales of medicines online. And, they've been working on for the last 3-4 years on the project. Obviously it's very regulated. It's a new product for them, leveraging the same channel they had. And this is obviously something that they have probably, looked for quite some time and gather intelligence from their clients, I would guess. Or another great example is when Netflix, I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that Netflix around up to 7, 8 years, 10 years ago, let's say, used to actually ship DVDs, right? So if you were in the US, you were using Netflix, the program was you were going to pay a certain amount of dollars per month, $10 per month, and you will receive 3 DVDs. And then every time you sent back a DVD, you receive a new one. And at a certain point, they decided that internet was a better channel to distribute digital content like videos and movies. And but obviously, if you put yourself in the shoes of whoever made that decision, that felt probably a lot like cannibalizing yourself, right? Moving from a business model that they were completely winning to the point that Blockbuster was on the brink of bankruptcy, to actually moving to a completely new business model. So how do you get comfort? Where do you start? And to me, there is one key thing you need to do. You need to focus the organization on listening to customers. At the end of the game, there is no organization that knows better than clients know. And so making sure that your innovation will come from talking to customers, listening to them, brainstorming with them, and then taking the information that they give you and going back and think about them within your company. And I'll give you kind of an example of 4 things we do at StashAway to make sure we always listen to our clients. So first is we have NPS surveys, and I'll explain in a second what it is, streamed to everyone on Slack, which is the communication software we use internally. So NPS surveys are the classic question: how likely are you to recommend StashAway to one of your friends? And most importantly, we also ask for details. Give us any comments or things we can do better. And so we receive several every day, and these are automatically streamed to a channel on Slack that actually everybody reads. So I read every day all NPS surveys from all of our clients. And that's true not just about me, of course, but also our product team, about the tech team, the marketing team, etc. And that gives us a sense of what the clients are asking for, what the clients are happy about, and what the clients may not be happy about. Second, we have a client engagement team that talks to our clients on a daily basis. These are the people that pick up the phone when you call StashAway. These are the people that respond to WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp channel that you can get in touch with us, or emails, etc., etc. And obviously, by talking to clients, several hundreds of our clients every day, or actually thousands every day at this point, they also collect feedback, and we have a kind of a good way to relay this feedback to the product team, the marketing team, the tech team, that are the ones that are more kind of focused every day on building new things and addressing customers' needs. One thing that we actually have paused at this point for a little bit of time, but we used to do have been monthly dinners with clients. So we used to pick around 10 clients on a monthly basis, randomly, invite them for dinner, and spend 2 hours or 2 hours and a half just picking their brains on what they liked about StashAway, what they didn't like about StashAway, what they would do differently, what they wanted StashAway to do for them. And I've been sitting on these dinners monthly until it was possible pre-COVID, and those have been actually great sources of inspiration for what to do next. And then lastly, we do a lot of seminars or webinars these days with Q&A at the end, and the Q&As are usually a great source of information of where kind of people are coming from, what are the questions that people want to ask us, and therefore what are the problems that they want us to focus. So, point number 2 is keep innovating, keep thinking about what you can do differently, what you can do more. And the way to do it for me is focusing the organization on listening to customers. And of course, some of the examples I've given are probably relevant for some of you and not relevant for others. Just hopefully the overall idea of finding ways to informally and formally talk to a client is kind of clear, and the reason why I'm preaching that is clear to you. So the third point is take care of your gold mine. What I mean with a gold mine, of course, here I'm kind of a little bit joking. I'm talking about your people. Your people are the basis for everything else. Hire great people and take care of them. We live in the era of kind of knowledge, right? So most companies actually sell knowledge, sell some sort of knowledge platforms in a way or another. And the main ingredient is not a gold mine. The main ingredient is having your people. And so you need to make sure that you take care of them both in good times as well as in times like 2020. And so how to know what to do? Same advice as for point B. Listen to your customers, which in this case are your people. Ask them what is working, what is not working for them. Right? This is the best way to understand what are the needs of your people and how you can make their life better and how you can make them happier so that they stick around longer, they are more creative, they dedicate more attention to the jobs, and they help build the company with you. And again, my suggestion is simply to ask your team, but I also want to share a few kind of maybe a few ideas just as a start. So first of all, don't forget the basics, which are be transparent, especially in bad times, acknowledge issues, celebrate successes, and do what the basics of management. Make sure that people feel part of what you're trying to do, and the best way to make people feel part of what the company is doing is actually for them to be part of it. So transparency should be real, should not be fake. Acknowledging when the problems arise should be kind of done in a real way, etc., etc. Yeah. Second is, and this is particularly true in kind of the whole COVID situation, is make sure there is some sort of engagement with your team and among your team. And obviously, we all miss some of the water cooler conversations, and it's very difficult to replicate it on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever platform your company may use. It's something that you miss, and some of that social connectivity that develops in the companies over time at the water cooler is this year kind of faded away. So what we did, for instance, is trying to focus as much as possible on online engagement. So we've done educational webinars internally, and for instance, we've also offered educational webinars to some of our employer partners. So we've done what we call financial wellness program for employees, where we've done webinars for for instance, some of the largest tech companies we can think of, where we talked about what are the basics of personal finance, what you need to do to manage your investments in kind of troublesome times like the one that we passed through this year, etc., etc. And obviously, you can think about financial education webinars, you can think about health educational webinars, or you can think about purely learning and development webinars, helping your people grow and maybe learn digital skills or learn whatever you think is going to be useful over time. Second is, I'll give you a StashAway example. We used to do twice a year some kind of a daily offsite where all of the company from all countries were kind of flying into Singapore and go to one location for a day and kind of have a mix of fun and work throughout the day. Obviously, this year was not possible. And so what we did a couple of months ago was an online, we call it offsite, but obviously everybody was actually at home. What we did was a day packed of activities, was again a mix of fun and work. I would say more play than work, but a little bit of both, with the overall goal of getting people to engage with each other. And we have created a program. It was all done through kind of Google Meet, and engagement was good, and actually feedback from the team was very, very good. We've also done games. I know some of the teams have organized kind of social games online over time, and all of those activities actually help cement team spirit. And in the case of StashAway, this is very difficult because we now have 150 employees, and a year ago we were 70. So we doubled in the last 12 months, and most of the new people have been hired remotely and have been completely remote. So helping them engage with the rest of the organization has been of paramount importance. I think this is also important for more traditional organizations that may not be growing as fast, but obviously even more important for somebody like us. Third idea is adopt more flexible hours and times. The reality is that the idea of kind of punching your card and kind of be in the office 9 to 5 is very difficult when people are working from home. And so kind of embrace the new normal and be more flexible. I mean, at StashAway, we've always been very flexible with hours, but I think a couple of things we've done this year is we actually went to have unlimited vacation days, so people can take as many holidays as they want. And in practice, we are the concept is, look, we're all adults. We know we get stuff to do, and you manage your workload. You need to get stuff done. Arrange it with your team. Arrange it with your manager. Take time off if you want to. Or secondly, another thing we did is we decided to allow for remote work. Of course, this year has been everybody's working remotely, but we are also thinking what happens after COVID, and we have decided that we're going to go to a place where we're going to allow people to work from home 2 days a week, no question asked, anytime, like after COVID, as well as work for 8 weeks consecutive elsewhere, remotely. And this is particularly important for international employees that may have their families somewhere else. So let's say you're a German person living in Singapore, your family is back in Germany. It's very difficult, especially even post-COVID. We are assuming flying is not going to be so easy. Very difficult to go back home for a week or 10 days. And so what we said is, look, you can go back for 8 weeks, and you can take 1 or 2 weeks off, and the remaining 6 weeks you actually work remotely. The only thing you need to assure is that you actually set up a system that allows you to work with your team. So perhaps you wake up very early in the morning, or you need to think about how you make it work for yourself. And lastly, if you are forced to lay off because you need to cut costs, do it graciously. And this is not just because obviously it's the right thing to do, but also because people that remain with the company will be somewhat affected by that as well. And so you want to make sure that the morale of the company remains positive, even if in troublesome times. So if you do need to lay off, do it graciously. And if you do need to lay off, it doesn't mean you cannot do everything as I just mentioned. You should always keep doing the basics, make sure your people engage with each other, and perhaps kind of become a bit more flexible so that they make life better for people that actually stay with the company. So the third point was take care of your people. Now, the last point I want to talk about is very simple, and is think ahead. I'm using an image that maybe some of you have seen recently. There's been a Netflix series that have been very, very successful. It's called Queen's Gambit, and it's about kind of a lady playing chess. And I'm using this image because obviously, as you play chess, you need to think ahead. You cannot just think about the next move. You need to think about 2, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. You need to know, if I do one thing, what is the other person doing and what I can do next. In business, it's the same thing. You can't just think about the next move. You need to have in mind what you're going to do next. And there is a former boss of mine, more than a decade ago, that used to tell me, look, the difference between good entrepreneurs and bad entrepreneurs is that good entrepreneurs think about the movie and bad entrepreneurs think about the picture. So you need to think about the movie. You need to think ahead. You need to think about, okay, if I do X, what's going to happen next? And therefore, what am I going to do next? And this is very important always, but particularly in troublesome times like today. So do some scenario analysis, for instance. Earlier in this year, in April, I remember we've kind of called for an emergency board meeting at StashAway, and just discuss, what are the scenarios, what can happen, and how we can react to that. And obviously, one of the things we decided to do was to make sure that we could kind of raise cash earlier than we originally planned for, so that we could actually continue on our expansion without waiting for COVID to go away. And so think ahead, think about your scenarios, try to think about what you're going to do if something happens. Is I think as important as the other three things I mentioned earlier. So as a recap, the basic rules become even more important when things get rough, and 2020 was definitely a rough year. 4 main points: protect the company's future. Start from your balance sheet, and make sure your future balance sheet gives you choices, gives you the leverage you need a year from now to make decisions. 2 is keep innovating. Even in troublesome times, you always need to think about, okay, what do I do next? How can I build something new? How can I leverage my resources to actually serve my clients better, or to reach new clients, or whatever that might be for your company? 3 is take care of your people. Super important. We are as I mentioned earlier, in the era of knowledge, and your knowledge is probably very deep inside your team. You want that team to stay for long. You want that team to work hard. You want that team to feel part of the journey. And lastly, think ahead. Don't just think about the next move. Think about 2, 3, 4 moves ahead. Okay, so these are my kind of 4 main suggestions for today on how to think about managing a business at certain times. If you want to try StashAway, as I mentioned, we're actually giving out a discount, so you can actually invest your first 100,000 ringgit for free, so no fees, for 6 months, by going to bit.ly/DGX participant. I think Michele will actually share the link so that you can click on it, but it's very easy. bit.ly/DGX participant. If you have any question, I guess Michele and I will be very happy to pick them up in a second. Michele, over to you.
Thank you so much, Michele. That was very clear and actionable advice that I'm sure all our audience was very happy to listen to. So while everyone puts your question into the comments box, we'll wait for 10 seconds for that to happen. I will start with a question from me first. As we know, majority of our customers and our participants at the webinar are business owners, or they run businesses. Looking at all the events that happened in 2020, starting from COVID, and then the oil crisis, the general elections, and then the news about the vaccine, how can a business in Malaysia start thinking about 2021? Is there anything that they should particularly be aware of, or they should take note of, so that they can think ahead, as what you've mentioned?
Look, it's very difficult to predict the future. So in general, especially these days, but it's always been difficult. So I guess my general advice is to run scenarios, right, rather than bet on one possible outcome. What are the scenarios? One scenario, the optimistic one, is that actually vaccines get delivered across the globe, including Malaysia, quite quickly, and we go back to life as usual in maybe 6-9 months from now. I don't think it's going to be earlier than that anyway. So maybe 6-9 months from now, things are going to go back to normal, and so you need to think about, okay, what are the implications for my business if things go back to normal? What can I do now to be ready 6 months from now if in fact things go back to normal? So I guess that's one scenario. Second scenario is vaccine don't work. There are some scam. A month from now we read on the papers that people in the UK that have started taking vaccine actually died. It's possible, right? So I know they've tested the vaccine, but and so there is always a risk. And what happens next? The markets drop again. Capital markets will kind of completely fade away. We may be locked again, working from home for some time. Traveling will not be allowed, etc., etc. So if that's the scenario, what can you do now? And I think my first point earlier, which is protect your balance sheet, it's probably the very first step I would do. So if you think that if that happens, you have a continuity issue, meaning that if something goes wrong 6 months from now or 9 months from now, you may run out of cash. then maybe now that people think that vaccines are coming and things are going to go better, it's actually a good time to potentially kind of knock at the door of investors and try to make sure you have a solid balance sheet, so that, again, hopefully you don't need that cash because things go well, but in case they don't, you're prepared.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. There was one question that was submitted by one of our participants who can't join today. Oh, we can start with this question first. So from Michele Ferrario, when speaking to customers via NPS surveys and through feedback, what did you learn about your customers that you didn't know before?
Many things, and some of them are very detailed. Parts. We are a digital wealth management platform, and our clients use our app, mobile app or desktop application, to manage their money and to invest for their retirement plan, for instance. And so sometimes people tell us about, for instance, some parts that are not clear in the app, how we display returns. So we've changed some of the details of the app over the last 4 years since we launched, by kind of reading some of these comments and realizing, they're right, actually this is not very clearly said. Let's actually change this, or change maybe some of our communication structure. Or for instance, we launched a year ago in Singapore and 6 months ago in Malaysia. We launched a product called StashAway Simple, which is a cash management product. So in practice, we are helping people not only invest for their retirement, but also park their cash. And currently, StashAway Simple in Malaysia gives 2.4% returns on ringgit, which is obviously very, very high compared to anything you can get from banks. And it's simple, so it's no minimum, no maximum, etc., etc. How do we develop that product? By listening to clients. So clients were saying, it's great. I have my retirement plan with you guys. I've never seen such high returns on my investments. I love the low fees, but I also have 200,000 ringgit doing nothing in my bank account where I get 0.2%. What can I do with that? Should I invest it? It's my safety net. And our suggestion is, if it's your safety net, you shouldn't invest it in a risky portfolio. And that's how we kind of start thinking, okay, maybe we need to also help people manage their cash, because apparently the banks are doing a bad job at helping people with that too.
Following up from that, there was a question about diversification. So the question is, for everyday consumers like us, the advice has always been to diversify our investment portfolio to cover different asset classes and geographies, so that we're not hit too badly when the economy goes down. But then how can a business look at diversification in the same perspective?
The logic is the same, right? Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So, you can think about products, you can think about channel. Internally in HR departments, people will talk about succession planning. It's the same logic. If somebody leaves, how do you replace that person? It's also diversification. Honestly, it's easier for larger businesses than it is for smaller businesses, meaning that if you are a small business with one product, one channel, one country, it's not easy to then diversify further, but it's something that over time, you may want to do. The reality is that you need to strike the right balance between diversifying, as for kind of the question, and kind of stretching yourself thin. So focus is important, right? And I would actually argue that focus is even more important than diversification in terms of business. You will not be able to do everything perfectly. There are some things to do well, and you need to focus there. So I think diversification in business should always be driven by a core competency. There is something you do particularly well, and that may give you the opportunity to do something else that is linked to that core competency. I wouldn't just kind of start doing random new things.
And on the same note as well, we had some of a similar question on balance. So you were speaking to us just now about goldmine, which is our employees. But for businesses, I think it's usually a lot more on a conceptual level. For a small business or a business owner of a small business, they always feel that, how do I balance between engagement activities, giving my employees time off, versus sustaining my business operations, considering that business isn't doing great now? So how can they look for that balance?
Obviously, it's a tricky balance, and it's difficult to give a very general answer. It really depends on business from business. But the reality is that, in my experience, when people are more engaged, they feel part of the journey, they feel they are treated like adults, they will end up actually doing more and contributing more than if you tell them, look, you need to be here from 9:00 to 5:00, and you cannot do that, and you just. So I think treating people like adults and giving them responsibilities end up churning good results over time. And so I lean toward giving people more freedom and kind of trusting my hiring process. If you hire well, then you can hope that people that you hire actually will do the right things without you kind of guiding them step by step. So my personal angle is that in the trade-off between controlling very much because I need the business to kind of be managed a certain way, and giving people a bit more freedom because I want them to be happier and feel part of the journey, I lean toward the second.
I think similarly here as well, I think what we realized during COVID-19 and working from home is that the employees' mental well-being is a lot more important. And if you look after your employees well, in turn, your business will be able to sustain too. So I think hopefully business owners will be able to realize that it's a little bit more middle long term. I don't think you can see the results instantly, but it's something that will pay off eventually.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I know the other way to think about it is that, for knowledge works, so let's forget for a second people that do a bit more manual work, but for knowledge workers, people that actually kind of do the job I do, the job you do, Michelle. So we don't move boxes, right? We need to create things. We need to think about stuff. So there is a creative angle to it, and the reality is that it's not obvious that you're gonna get more things done in 8 hours, that you've been forced to sit at your chair, rather than in 6.5 hours if you spend 1 hour going for a run. Because maybe that 1 hour run actually gave you some sort of creative angle that actually helps you get stuff done faster. Obviously, it's different if your job is very manual and you need to move box around. Partially similar, meaning that still you can work at a certain speed. And if you are more enthusiastic about your job, you're going to work at a probably higher speed, so you end up being more efficient. But obviously, maybe you lose a little bit of the creative angle and that I was talking about earlier. But in general, I think we do live in an era where most of the value is created by, again, being creative, doing new things, and getting things done more efficiently. And there's not a direct relation one-to-one between how much time you put in and what is the output. I think there is a bit more of a complex algorithm to understand, how much is going to be the end result. And there is a lot of it that comes from people's individual motivation and how they, how much kind of a mental freedom or they actually put into their work.
I definitely agree with that. There are a lot more intrinsic reasons to why someone would contribute at work, and it's not always equal amounts of input will lead to equal amounts of output, especially for knowledge workers, as you mentioned. Great. The next question we have is from Daryl, and the question is: with the uncertainty in the current times, what are some of the frameworks or processes that has helped you with your decision making? So I guess, for example, launching StashAway Simple, and then versus focusing on retention of existing customers.
It's a good question and a tough one, I would say. So I think the way I think about it is that it's very important you have some sort of North Star. So you know where you want to be 3, 4, 5 years ahead. Knowing that may change over time, but given what you know today, you know where you want to be 5 years from now. And then you know what your mission is. You know what you want to stand up for. You know what what you want your clients to think about the company. So for instance, in our case, our mission is to empower people to build wealth for the long term. And so there is a long-term component, there is an empowerment component, and so as we make decisions on should we do this or not, we think about, is this coherent with our long-term mission? And another thing that sorry, this is happening. But sorry. Sorry, I guess this is
of working from home.
Exactly. It's now normal, I guess. Apologies for that. So this is one of my three kids, the eldest one. So what I was saying is you need to have a kind of a North Star, and then so where you want to be, and also some sort of mission or kind of some sort of thinking about how to what are the things that are coherent with your positioning and where the way your clients want to perceive you. Those are kind of frameworks, you can call them, or processes that help you think about kind of what makes sense for you, what doesn't.
Great. I think there are no new questions in the comment section, but I just have one more that touches on what you've mentioned just now. It's a bit more on companies who are struggling right now, and they've been struggling since the start of the MCO in Malaysia, for instance. How can they evaluate whether it is actually time for their business to shut down and they have to move on?
Good question. At the end of the game, if you don't, you need to do your analysis and think whether you have, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Do you have enough? I go back to the balance sheet discussion. Do you have a strong enough balance sheet to reinvent the business in a way that you believe is going to be successful? And if the answer is no, and you can't raise cash from either banks or investors, then unfortunately you need to fold it, right? So I think, and obviously the earlier you have this foresight, the better it is, because you're gonna consume less less external money. But that's at the end of the game, this is the short thing is you need to look at your balance sheet and kind of be very honest with yourself. Is this balance sheet enough to let me go through this period, or is it possible to restructure in a way that it makes it possible or not?
Great, and I think that is all the questions that we have for today. All the answers as well as the presentation was extremely clear, so I am certain that our participants were able to really benefit from it. If you guys have any other questions that we weren't able to answer during this webinar, or you are too shy to ask, you can email us at hello@allhr.my, or if you want to reach out to StashAway, their email is support@stashaway.my. If you didn't catch the code just now, don't worry, we'll email you that in an EDM as well, or you can look for the link in the chat. And please remember to fill up your information in the link provided in the description box so that we can send you some other materials after this. Thank you so much, Michele, for your time and sharing all these insights with us.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. And our next webinar is happening next Thursday, the 17th of December at 10:30 a.m. It's about safe business travel during COVID-19. You can sign up for that event in the link that we will share with you later via email as well. So remember to fill up the form in the description box below as usual. If there is another topic that you'd like us to cover in our webinar in the future, do let us know via email. This webinar will also be turned into a podcast for you to listen to on the go. It will be coming soon. We'll let you know when that happens. So that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you soon. Thank you.